Hello, everyone, and welcome back to CODEstantine Meetups. My name is Bratislav, and I'll be your host of today's meetup. Today's talk will be about Apollo Kotlin, development and compliance in health industry. And we'll also touch a topic of good and bad sides of GraphQL and its comparison with RESTful API. So I'd also like to really send out big thank yous to our dear friends from the company Vicert that are today's meetup supporters. Vicert is a tech company in Belgrade, and they specialize in building digital health solutions. And for the past 15 years, they've been building products for healthcare industry. And of course, you can find more about them within this special area on this platform, Expo area, which is actually the icon on your left-hand side, just below the stage. So you can click there, find their booth. It's the only one. It's very easy to find, and you can just shoot the questions and everything you're interested in about Vicert. So as you probably know by now, CODEstantine is developers community founded in Niš, Serbia, and we're expanding further with every new CODEstantine meetup or conference. We strive to gather top developers, such as today's, and to talk about a variety of different tech topics. So far, we've organized more than 20 CODEstantine meetups and six conferences, and transformed into awesome community of tech experts and developers. And you can check out our website and our social media for further information. CODEstantine is organized by Knowledge Hub team, also from Serbia, and we have been working on strengthening communities of entrepreneurs, startups, and tech experts. So today, with us, we have Nikola Crnogorac. He is iOS and Android developer at Vicert. He has vast experience in mobile development field, and we're super excited to have him share it with us today. So thanks a lot for taking the time to join us today, Nikola. But before we start, I'd really like to encourage all of the participants to ask as many questions as they want and to be active in the chat. The chat is on your right-hand side. So you can just jot anything you'd like to ask. The questions will be answered just after Nikola's presentation. So Nikola, the floor is now yours. You may take over.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Nikola Crnogorac. I work as mostly Android developer for Vicert for almost a year. And I'm here to share a bit of my wisdom that I gathered for the last year about health tech, mostly for Android apps, Apollo Kotlin, HIPAA compliant software, and a lot of stuff between. So we can start. As we all know, data is new gold, or maybe we can call it data is the new oil, or even today, at the latest news, data is the new milk. So are those just marketing slogans for businesses to spend more money on technology, or maybe some metaphors describing a new paradigm for the world? So let's talk a bit about data. Let's start with a few facts. Both oil and gold were buried down under the surface of the earth for millions of years, and both only started to become available for humans for past few thousand years. Similarly, the data has been around for ages, starting for the early Sumerian and Chinese writing systems throughout centuries in data printed books, since the 20th century in the digital form in computer systems. And also data has value when it's served in the right format that can be read, consumed in another way. For centuries, the use of data was in stage comparable with the use of oil and light petrol lamps. But it started to accelerate in the digital era. Since the first days of computer, humans developed a way to make information readable and accessible for everyone. The era we are presently living operates under the simple formula that I already mentioned a couple of times: data is gold. So when we look in the industry that deals with user data, that also bound to see some compliances in aiming to make industry more safeguarded. So health sector too is not untouched by need to strict compliances to save user data for getting misused in this mobile first era. So what is HIPAA? So a lot of people, when I was researching it, wrote it in the wrong way. For some reason, I saw a lot of HIPAA like HIPAA instead of HIPAA. So, and that was something totally different, and that is a mistake I see at least like a 50% of the time for the people that don't understand what this is and just write what they think it should be. Although the compliances vary from nation to nation, one of the one that has become most universal in many grounds is the HIPAA, or how I like to call it, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. I'm joking. HIPAA, we are familiar with the word, right? Something to do with doctors, patients, and all the information that is in that area. But there is also, you must know, there is also a set of rules that protects the personal healthcare information about all the clients, or healthcare information to the clients that they tell to their doctors, often in confidence, and they don't want unwanted exposure for outside entities. But truth is, HIPAA is much more than that. We're going to explore HIPAA in greater detail, and who knows, maybe we'll learn a thing or two in this massive road we have upon us. HIPAA was enacted in 1996. An act goes beyond protecting personal identification information. It also modernizes the way of the flow of healthcare information and addresses the limitations on healthcare insurance coverage. And once it was enacted, the healthcare industry as a whole underwent massive changes. And since then, it continues to evolve. So little more, I want to tell you a bit more about the developer side of things. So as a healthcare software developers, we develop HIPAA mobile apps that are secure and are according to all of the compliances for HIPAA compliance. The HIPAA Act ensures that there are zero anomalies when handling and storing patient data, especially in the software platforms, and also includes sharing of information related to the billing and healthcare insurance for the medical patients. So we will go a bit more deeper on that subject. Which medical app needs to comply? To make a medical app, we need to comply to a couple of HIPAA rules just to start it. So we have two aspects. We have data covered by the app, or PHI, which means protected health information. The word, the PHI, you will see it in that to be mentioned a lot in this presentation, because that is the foundation of everything. That protected health information will be the foundation of everything we work for the apps that we use in the medical industry. And the other is entities using the app. So we will go a bit deeper in that. So PHI, or protected health information, is any individual identifiable health information that is created, collected, stored, used, or transmitted by a covered entity or its business associates in form including electric, paper, or oral. So it includes past, present, future information about mental health and condition of the individual, the provision of healthcare to the individual, and information related to the payment of the health for the payment for the healthcare. Health information also includes demographic information about individual. So when I say PHI, I mean names, dates, phone numbers, fax numbers, social security numbers, account numbers, health plan, everything regarding license number, vehicle identifications, everything regarding to the patient is looked as the protected health information. Even the biometric identifiers, full face photos, everything. So as a general rule, it really falls down to what information is being collected. Consumer apps that are collecting information such as calorie counts or weight loss information typically don't need to be compliant because it is easy. When you go to the App Store, Google Play, there's a thousand of those apps because they're easy to produce. They don't need to go by the certain standards to the certain compliances like HIPAA. So it is generally not that secure because it is not needed to be secure. For example, the Google Fit and Google and Apple Health apps are not collecting PHI. So mobile app HIPAA compliance is not necessary in these cases. On the other hand, medical apps are usually up for a deeper scrutiny. If the app will be used by the medical personnel, then there's a good chance it will be HIPAA compliant. Maybe even in these cases, because it is logical if you see some doctor or nurse or someone using your information, even those kinds of information that is HIPAA compliable. So let's talk about the second thing I mentioned, the covered entities. So covered entities are individuals or entities, institutions, companies that transmit PHI for transactions. So these entities shall be governed by HIPAA only if they are responsible for electronically conducting administrative and financial transactions. So we have some classified covered entities like health plans and healthcare providers. So in health plans, we have health insurance companies, health maintenance organizations, government programs that pay for healthcare, military and veteran programs, and for healthcare providers, clinics, doctors, psychiatrists, nursing homes, dentists, pharmacists, and a lot more than that. So, and any public-private entity that facilitates the processing of non-standard healthcare data in a standard data format, such as electronic standard on behalf of other organizations. So this is the major thing, the thing everyone is scared for, the HIPAA violation. So average fine for HIPAA violation is $1.5 million, but it can range from from 50,000 to more than 1.5 million. So it is all about what kind of damage has been done. So it's also worth noting this doesn't need to be the result of a large-scale breach. Rather than small breaches can cause most of the fines. So this includes something like employee losing or misusing portable devices of the patient information, or communicating with the patient through unencrypted means like if you have a patient and for some reason you don't use the app required for your communication with the patient, you use Viber or Facebook or something that is not HIPAA compliant. So healthcare providers should regularly train and retrain staff for HIPAA regulations. At the same time, strengthened regulations and safeguards to protect against violations are encouraged. So these are some interesting HIPAA facts. Just a moment. So the top three causes of data breach are employee action, lost or stolen devices, or third-party error. Also, 70% of the companies had an incident over the past 12 months, but I read there is even more. That is the 70% that we heard of. Also, 82% have not conducted the security list assessments in the past 3 months. So your PHI is valuable. That is so valuable that even if you die, it is protected for 50 years. And unfortunately, 26% of breaches result from the IT staff failure to follow policies and procedures. So now let's make some HIPAA apps. Developing HIPAA compliant healthcare apps can sometimes pose a challenge for healthcare developers because we are the ones who have all the responsibility to make everything work and be compliant to all the protocols. So here's some peek into it. So to make a HIPAA compliant app, there are 4 primary rules. So we have privacy, security, enforcement, and breach. Now, privacy ensures protection for the use and disclosure of medical records and PHI. So the rule is intended to make the transfer for the health data more efficient. Now, security aims to protect ePHI created, received, used, or maintained by the entities that are responsible for them. Enforcement rule lays on the Department of Health and Human Service, and the breach notification rule requires HIPAA covered entities and their business partners to notify HIPAA covered entities of any unsecured breach, including paper-based or electronic-based. So while as app developers, we have to look into R4 rules, companies also look above those rules. I can divide it to physical and technical safeguards above all of these rules. So physical safeguards. So as the image shows, all included protection of the backend, the network data transfer, and the devices that are on Android and iOS ensure that they cannot be compromised, lost or stolen. To ensure the application security, of course, we will have to use some kind of two-factor authentication. So that's the least we can do to protect stolen info in PHI. So, and technical safeguards, they focus completely on ensuring the encryption of the data that can be transferred or stored on the servers and devices. And some of the technical safeguards are emergency access process, unique user identification, automatic log off. I read somewhere like I think 12% of US citizens lose their accounts because the apps don't have automatic log off above the healthcare apps. So it's a major concern. Another best practice in regarding for the following minimal necessity requirements are: we do not need to collect more data than we need. So we just take data we need. Because of that, soon I will explain why the GraphQL is good for that reason. Also, one of the bad things we have is storaging of the data. So every encryption can sometimes be breached. So even though it is stored on the phone and encrypted, it's just a matter of time, as we all know it. So these are examples of the two most popular apps, popular kinds of apps today used in that are HIPAA compliant. So first one is telemedicine or doctor on demand apps, and the second is EHR, electronic health record apps. So there are many more, but these are the most used ones. So let's talk a bit about telemedicine apps. I have the most experience in them. So let's say you need to see the doctor, but you cannot find a way to make it happen. Or maybe you're located somewhere that is difficult to go to the doctor. Maybe it sounds familiar or not. But depending on the issue, the telemedicine may be the answer or temporary solution for the non-emergency concerns. With the telemedicine apps, you can receive remote healthcare service from the doctor without stepping foot in their office. And as you guess, telemedicine and HIPAA compliance go hand in hand. Telemedicine is the way to access healthcare appointments with doctor or nurses on the internet using your phone or computer. These appointments are usually video calls through the app or a platform or some other service. There can also be telephone calls, email support, or online chat messaging. The idea of telemedicine isn't to replace the clinic visit of the doctor. That can never be replaced because there's a lot of stuff you cannot see on the camera or touch. So instead, they should people may use telemedicine to talk with the doctor to see if they need a physical appointment, request or renew prescriptions, because that's one of the major issues. Everyone had to go sometimes to the doctor and stay in lines just to get one prescription. So access and treat minor health conditions, and access therapy or the mental health issues. That are all the stuff that you don't need to be physically there. That can be at least the first aid for some short point of time. Additionally, many telemedicine apps are making strides to become a primary care providers for folks rather than just an active visits. And now with this pandemic, we had a rapid, widespread and adoption of telemedicine technology, and we also started to use a lot of services like Twilio, Zoom for healthcare, Ring Control, GoTo, and those services give us all of the ways to communicate with doctors, like as the patients that are with HIPAA protocols. So when we build an app, for example, we don't need to spend like half a year developing secure video conversation or secure chat and everything. There are services that can help us implement them, and we don't need to think about it, what will go wrong, and that are proven. And also, I'll talk a bit about electronic health record. So mobile EHR apps allow you to take your healthcare professionals to take digital notes opposed to the paper. So everything was written on the tablets or smartphones. And the mobile EHR is on iOS and Android devices, represents one of the major growth areas in EHR market, and has been documented to be an efficient way to improve practice efficiently. And that's most of it for now. And let's go further. So as I previously mentioned, if you remember, I mentioned security of the apps. By the way, we don't store any more information than needed. So here we have Apollo Kotlin. So Apollo Kotlin, or formerly known as Apollo Android, but after release of the Kotlin, they move all of their infrastructure to that language, and now they did a rebranding. Is a GraphQL client that generates Kotlin and Java models for GraphQL queries, but don't panic. I will prove this a bit later. So Apollo Kotlin executes queries and mutations against GraphQL servers and it returns results in query-specific Kotlin types. This means you don't have to deal with parsing JSON. You don't need to move, passing around maps and making clients cast some types. You don't need to make thousands of REST API calls and everything. GraphQL does it everything. As you can see in this image of the burger, you have one API call when you just can get a burger and nothing else, nothing more. But if you make a GraphQL call with Apollo Kotlin or without it, because I am talking about Apollo Kotlin because I mostly work with Android, you can just take what part of the burger you want, and that's all. So but wait a moment, I'm talking a lot about GraphQL. So what is GraphQL? And GraphQL is a query language for APIs and a runtime for fulfilling these queries with your existing data. So GraphQL provides complete and understandable description of the data in your API, gives your clients the power to ask exactly what they need, nothing more, nothing less, and make it easy to evolve over time. So one good thing about in large teams when you work and you have GraphQL and you need some small change, you don't need to call the backend developers to make you certain API. You can be your backend developer because you don't. I need to clear a couple things up. So GraphQL doesn't have anything to do with the databases itself. It's a simple query language to query a database. So it's not an alternative to SQL. It's not a REST API replacement. Rather, it is alternative you can utilize both in the project, or maybe not, depending on the project. So in the nutshell, GraphQL was created in 2012 by Facebook to be a replacement for REST. And as you can guess, Facebook developed it because when you open Facebook, there's like tens and tens, maybe even hundreds of calls for different APIs, from APIs for images, for pages, people, for advertisement and everything, and that would be very complicated to handle on the large scale after some time. So they developed this GraphQL, and it is a pattern. It's not a technology. So one of the benefits of GraphQL is the stronger type schema. It can be shared with client and the server. It can validate requests at the build time. So it can autocomplete queries and mutations. It can be mocked easily, which is very cool. And it has a passionate community with frequent updates, so it is getting better all the time. So here's an example of the GraphQL query. So as you can see, we have a query with some name and some attributes here, and we want some kind of hero, and his name. So we just, let's say, want an episode that is called the Jedi. And it will give us exactly that data we want. So we have three different things in GraphQL. We have this query part where you write everything you want about, where you write everything you need. You can write queries, mutations, and subscriptions. We have a variables type where you write everything you need to pass to get that information, and you have the response part. But I'll get more in the detail of that later. So when I'm already talking about GraphQL and everything, it seems like we should now all just drop the RESTful API and just use GraphQL. But both of them have some good and bad stuff. But I'll mostly focus on GraphQL. So one good stuff about GraphQL is managing different types of clients. So let's say we have a team that develops Android app, iOS app, and front end for the web app. And every app needs some kind of different API for their different reason. And imagine when we have three types of developers that are asking backend developers to make different APIs just for them and just for the certain occasion. It would be really chaotic, I think. This way it is cheap and you can do everything by yourself, by your exact needs. Also, we have a slow front-end development. So I'm not sure. After that, we have a network performance. Now, about network performance, as you can see in the image on the right, we have a comparison between REST API and GraphQL. And in the REST API now, we can just, for this example, we have some kind of person with an ID number 1, and backend will just return everything that has for that person in their model that will be within that information for first name, middle name, last name, email. And for some reason, you just need first name and last name. You don't need additional information. But with GraphQL, as you can see, we can just tell him, I need first name and last name, nothing else, nothing more. And it will just return it that way. And also, why GraphQL is much better than the rest is the include versus the endpoint design choice. So let's say we have a project. We have a user resource on the backend with the first name, last name, email, and 10 other fields. And just a moment, for some reason it's back. Let's imagine we built some simple project management tool, and we have 3 types of resources. So we have name, we have users, projects, and tasks. So we also define the following relationship between resources, and we want to use REST API. Now, when we use the REST API, if we want a list of users, we must get that API different. If you want a single ID for user, second API. If you want all the projects for one user, then we are already in trouble. And things, as you can see here, it is the same example as I already told. So get all projects for one user, and let's for example have just a moment. For some reason I lost some data. So things get thicker when request gets more complex. And so I want to show you the only project titles on the homepage with this first get users ID project, but I also want project and tasks on the dashboard, and I don't want to make multiple REST calls. So this can be also be possible to make in REST API, but I think it is not quite scalable and not good on the long run, and because of that, we can do this with a simple query. We have user by ID 1, and we can get all the results project from the project titles for the homepage, but also project tasks on the dashboard without making multiple calls for the multiple REST calls. But I think I went deep enough in the GraphQL, so maybe we can return to Apollo Kotlin. So now that when we understand what Apollo Kotlin is and everything, at least in the simple way, these are some requirements that we need to even start working on it on Android Studio. So first of all, we need to know Kotlin language. After that, view binding, but it is not necessary. View model also, it is not necessary, but it's good to have it, of course, as live data, coroutines, and of course MVVM. First of all, what we need to do, we need to install GraphQL in the Android Studio. So after we make a regular project in Android Studio, we can just firstly go to the plugins and download GraphQL plugin. So with that plugin downloaded, we can have a bit of an upgrade for Android Studio, so we can do some magic with GraphQL. So before even starting to work on some project, we need some kind of source of data, maybe some kind of playground. And I put some link here for one of the thousands of free playgrounds where we gathered some data that can be used. So to round this image around, Apollo Kotlin or Apollo Android, it is some medium between regular Kotlin code and GraphQL, and it is the only one currently, as I know, that is successful. Maybe there are others, but this one is this one shows the best results, and for healthcare industry, of course. So after we set all of the initial stuff, so we have the playground that we use, we have the plugin. First of all, what we need to do, we need to go to the build Gradle file on the module level and insert the dependencies to work on it. We need 2 Apollo dependencies, but I always like to insert more stuff like Android lifecycle and OK HTTP. And also we need to add some code for build Gradle file on the project level of the Android app, so we can set up the Apollo. After that, need to open the project files not as a Android look as it is default, but we need to open it as a project files look. And then I also forgot to mention, before doing all of this setup stuff, we need to rebuild the project. So some libraries could be inserted. And first of all, we need to insert .graphql config file. And when we insert that file, we have some code that is mostly the same, at least for this simple project. So we have name, schema part, extensions, and when we find this code on internet, the only thing we need to change for this setup, we need to change the URL. So I put the URL of the playground I found on internet that was open. And after that, you can see the red arrow pointing to the play button. And when we click to that play button, it will execute the script that will generate a schema JSON file in the project files that will have all needed schemas for you to work with GraphQL in the code. So everything will be pre-inserted. So nothing like let's say in REST API, when we work with REST API, we need to add all the models and everything manually, and manually need to update them or delete them and everything like that. Here, it is all done automatically every time you do an update. This can also be done by some scripts in terminal, but I'm not some script guy. If I have a UI, I click on the UI button. So after doing all of that stuff, we are almost ready to go. We have GraphQl operations to be inserted. So we have three types of GraphQl operations. We have queries, we have mutations, and subscriptions. I will here demonstrate you how queries work and how mutations work. Subscriptions are a bit above our time here, so we'll stick to that. So after we try our code in the playground and see what data we exactly need, we can just copy that code, as you can see in the image one, and we can even execute it here within the Android Studio to see the data, to double check it if we want, or even we can even test it here within the Android Studio. Here are two examples of mostly the same thing. In the left side, we just get a list of data, and on the right side, we have an ID and get just data for that ID. And every time we make some query or mutation, in the project files, we need to generate a new file. Let's say insert user.graphql. And after adding new file and adding a query, every time we need to rebuild the project. So in the background, it can generate all the models for that exact query in the background. And here's the same example, but not for getting list of users or one user. This is for inserting user, updating, or deleting user. Nothing wow here, but just to leave it here. So let's have some fun. So first, after doing all of these initial steps, configuring GraphQL and everything, now we can finally start using it and seeing our results in the code. So first thing we need to do on this simple example, we need to create some instance class with some URL that is, again, a URL or a playground. And then most of people will already recognize, if they don't know GraphQL, the code is pretty simple, pretty similar to the retrofit code. So here also we have OK HTTP client, we have interceptors, we have timeouts, everything. But this is the initial step for configuring GraphQL. After this, we can just open some activity like main activity, in the image, in the second image, I made some kind of setup here where we have a binding of all the widgets in the view, and we have a client variable that calls Apollo instance.get. So after this call, Apollo is instantiated in this class. This is a rough look of in the real time. In the real circumstances, we will use Dagger 2 or Dagger Hilt or even Coin if someone likes it. So after the initial step, the rest of the code mostly is for the adapter that is used to show the lists. So on the bottom of the onCreate method, we have a getUsers list. So when we go to that method now, here we have some lifecycle scope where we finally call some GraphQL query that was already generated. So we have val response that calls the query and sets a limit to 10 pages that will be executed. And also it has Apollo exception for any reasons. Here it is some trivial exception just for the showcase. And if we have some data, array list will get full, and we can send that array to the adapter. Otherwise, it will not show any data. And here on the right, we have some simple look of that app where we have name, rocket, time, and Twitter. Also, here are all more usages for the same thing. So let's say on the list I previously showed you, we click on the list, and now we opened the exact item that we clicked. And now if we want to show the details from that list, we have that method getUserById, and mostly the same code. So we have a result that can try to that has a client to try to connect to the GraphQL query by the ID. And if we have some data there on the bottom, we can see the binding for the name, rocket, Twitter, and delete, and we can fill that data. Also, we have insert user, delete user. There's also an update user, where mostly all the same things. But here we have a little difference. So when you have an insert user, so if you remember in the previous slide, we have this plus on the bottom right side. So let's say we clicked on the plus and we want to add a new user. And we will return on the middle image here. So now this method will wait for us to enter the name, the rocket, and the Twitter. And after submitting, it will mutate, because you can see there is a client.mutation and then insert user mutation class that was automatically generated. The same thing goes to the delete user. So we have also a mutation that does all the delete stuff. So GraphQL, I think GraphQL is changing the healthcare because one of the biggest challenges has been integrating with health systems. It's an open secret that data is far from standardized in healthcare, which makes data interoperability a challenging problem to save. With the introduction of GraphQL in HL7 FHIR, lots of numbers and letters, but it is pronounced fire. FHIR, fire, for some reason it is pronounced. Most of the issues were solved. So now every project that uses GraphQL in the healthcare, it has most of the security patches similar like REST API, even though everyone says still REST is a bit more secure, but with a few changes here and there, GraphQL can be secure also. So, and one good thing about GraphQL in healthcare generally is all the healthcare applications we have out there have thousands of services, microservices, servers, insurance companies, everything, and all of those have different servers, different access of data. And imagine if we need to use RESTful API for that, it will be chaotic. With GraphQL, developers on the backend can make it for us, so we can just take what we please if we have that authorization, of course. And software cures the world, Weissert. That's all from me.
Nicola, that was great presentation. Thank you so much for everything you've managed to share. We've seen some interaction here on the polls, and we also have a few questions. So let's start with the question from Mila Stojanovic. And she asks, do you think that GraphQL is an underrated query language?
Yeah, because before I started to work in healthcare industry, I thought it was underrated. I thought it was waste of time because I haven't seen any real benefit. But when I work with these healthcare products and everything, I can see with large sum of data when we work with that. I cannot imagine now working without GraphQL because I think for this kind of situations, it's really cool stuff and really useful. So I think it is quite underrated still because everyone still think about that like Facebook. When you say GraphQL, first thing you think about is Facebook, but it went way above Facebook a long time ago. So
Got it.
My answer for the question.
Awesome, thank you. We have another question here from Sanya Stojkovic, and she asks, she says, I'd like to start the transition from REST to GraphQL. Do you have any recommendations on resources that would be useful?
Yeah, there is one on Udemy. You can go and just type Apollo GraphQL, and you can find. I think there is only one course now, maybe a few more, but the one on the top. You can start from that course, and there I think there are some topics about the simple transition, but it's never simple. So that's it.
Awesome. Okay. The next one is from Philip. Philip asks, does Apollo client have a robust caching system for GQL queries?
I didn't use a lot for caching. I just use it for a couple of occasions for now, because as if you listen to my presentation, less data is best. So caching is a big no, at least for a long time. So I didn't use a lot of caching in the queries, but I saw it is kind of robust.
Mm-hmm. Okay, awesome. I don't think we have any more questions related to your presentation. So overall, thank you so much for your presentation and for your inputs on these topics. What I would like to ask and to hear more is you as a mobile developer or Android developer and iOS developer in healthcare industry. So what does that look like, and how does that compare to some other industry that you worked in?
Okay, so before working in the healthcare industry, I've worked in a couple of industries, mostly gaming, government type of apps, sport apps, and everything. But it was a lot of hit and misses there. But here, one thing I like the most is you must always be with the time you live in. So you cannot on all the dependencies, all the methods if there is something new, because every new stuff has some always security. Always has some security patches. But one good thing is you always work on something new. So as I saw it in the past year, we had some couple of transitions to some latest coding practices and everything, latest dependencies. So we are mostly up to date for the past year. So I really like it. I didn't. This is something I was not anticipating, because when I Googled it before I started to work in the healthcare industry, there is a lot of stuff, but no, there was not mention for that. So that is something I realized mostly.
Awesome. So there's no going back to some traditional or conventional industries, right?
Not anytime soon. Maybe if they make some no break-ins in some industries.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, awesome. Thank you for your answer, and thank you again for the time that you dedicated to our community. I hope everyone from the audience enjoyed it and found it useful. And for the ones who couldn't make it to this event, the live event, we'll have it posted on our CODEstantine community website and on YouTube, our channel. Again, I would like to thank Vicert for the support, and for everyone who didn't get to meet Vicert at their expo booth. You can visit their website, vicert.rs, to hear and see more about them. So thank you so much to everyone who has been here to support us and to watch the meetup, and I hope I will see you all soon. Have a good night and see you soon. Bye-bye.